I am Ryan Block, the curator of this fantastically technologically not too savvy show tonight called the Open Heart Collective. For those of you who are just tuning in and have not been a part of this before or don't know what this is all about, this is a mental health focused podcast in which we have Raw Real Live, because we're all live right now across Facebook and Instagram. And we just share stories from amazing human beings who have lived incredible lives and who have something to say and a story to share. And so tonight we've got Mr. Isaac Stackhouse joining us. And tonight what we're going to do is we're going to learn Isaac's story. We're going to have him share as much or as little as he wants to share. And then we'll learn a little bit about what was some of those dark moments, some of those obstacles he's had to overcome and what he's done to overcome them. And then last but certainly not least, we're going to learn about what's exciting in his world right now, because oftentimes when we're talking the subject of mental health, the talk ends at the darkness or the talk ends at the obstacle. Rarely does it ever move beyond that. So with no further ado, welcome to the Open Heart Collective, Isaac. It's great to have you, man.
I'm glad to be here.
We were going back and forth on this before we started the show. How long have we actually known each other?
I think I've been following you it might have been when I first started on Instagram, because I haven't introduced myself. I guess I'm an MMA fighter. And as I started my MMA career, I was like, I need to have an Instagram because, that's how you're famous at that point, because, that then was when we were everyone was building audiences and you were going to do all that. So I think just in my growth, like doing the Gary V, like growth hacking, like trying to follow people and like trying to reach out, I randomly came across you. And I think you were in Nashville. Were you ever located in Nashville, or were you doing business in Nashville?
I had done business in Nashville.
Yeah. That's what it was. And I happened to be there like the same weekend you were, and I saw it on your Instagram story, and I was like, hey, and we tried to like coordinate something then. And
that's right.
Yeah. So that was like 2 years ago, I think, or something like that. I tried to go back and find it, but I mean, the DMs are where everything just gets full of people, all kinds of different things. So like there's no telling how deep in those that it was. But yeah, we've known each other for a minute. Just
right. I mean, so yeah, this is the first time that actually Isaac and I have spoken, let alone had an in-depth conversation outside of DM bombing one another. But yeah, so Isaac, introduce yourself to us. Give us a little bit of your backstory. Give us the whole damn story.
Yeah.
And looking forward to learning your story, man.
Well, really, there's a few different places I could start.
Wherever you want to start, my man.
Probably the most obvious one, if you saw the picture that you shared, I have a giant scar on my chest. And when I was 13 years old, I had a heart attack at competitive swim practice.
Wow.
Like in the swim team I was on, like a lot of the guys that I swam with have competed at the level of Olympic trials and things like that. So like it was a pretty big to deal, like teen, like everybody was going to national championships and stuff like that. So like it was a really competitive team. So like we trained hard. So turned out that I had a congenital heart defect where my aorta and pulmonary cut off one of my I think it's my right one. One of them still kinked, but that's my left one. So the right one went back between the aorta and pulmonary, and so when I would stress the heart, it would cut off the blood flow to my heart. So I had surgery. They after months and months of kind of like trying to figure out why this perfectly healthy 13-year-old, and like I grew this beard when I was 12, man. Like yeah, for people that are on audio, like I have a thick beard, and I have to tell people all the time, this isn't a fashion choice. This is purely just it grows so fast. So this is what I'm stuck with. So when I was young, I mean, like nurses would come in to draw my blood, and they'd open the door and they'd be like, "Oh, we were looking for a 13-year-old boy. Sorry." I was like, "No, that's him." So I hit my growth spurt and like never went any further. and during that time, they were trying to figure out, you know, all these problems, because that problem didn't like glaringly show itself.
Right.
The doctor happened to catch it on an EKG of there was a very minute difference, and he's like, this kid's having a heart attack, and everybody's like, no, he's not. And then they ran the extra test to, like, catch the markers, and they're like, oh, he's having a massive heart attack. And so long story short on that, it took a doctor, Dr. Blues, that she went against what everybody, and she's like, she knew what she thought the problem was, and she had to do like really specific, like when she did the echocardiograms, she would have me lay on my back and like hang my head off the bed, and she would go and put it down basically my throat, and look straight down on my heart, and that's how she could see the problem. And it ended up taking like a 4D machine to prove that, to show it. Like, I'm in some textbooks like about like my heart.
Wow. Okay.
And so that was kind of, I was a hardcore athlete in that. And then 3 months after open heart surgery, they flew me, the surgeon that they found that was like really, really good at this. They came into me the night before my surgery, and were basically telling me, they were like, basically the information we have on your problem comes from autopsies. We're just figuring it out from, you know, people that drop dead for no reason, are like, oh, here's the problem. And you're like one of 11 of the people that are alive that have it, that we can like work on in that like group of doctors.
What?
Yeah, so like my options to go get surgery once they figured out the problem, and I'm like cutting some of the story, but
I mean, we have an hour, so you can go a little bit more elaborate if you want to.
I'm gonna get through all the stuff, because it's my options to get the surgery were, and my mom will probably be like, I wasn't that, but it was like Duke, Boston, China, and like somewhere in LA were the like only places that could do my surgery, that had surgeons that were like comfortable with doing the that I needed. And they ended up settling on Boston's Children's in Boston. And what is nuts, they flew me up there.
You mean to get, wait a second. You mean it gets more nuts than this?
Yeah. Like and what really pushed it over the edge was I went to a certain hospital, and this certain hospital did a bunch of tests, and they were doing, I had to do a nuclear stress test, and like the kind of shape I was in was, they have the type of things that like it's called jogging in a bottle, and I can't remember all the like cocktail that they give you, and it so that people that are like too big to be able to run to do the nuclear test, they can like chemically induce it. They gave me that and made me run. That's how good of a shape I was in when I was like 13.
Wow.
Like at the target heart rate, they had to like overdo it. And so I went to this hospital, and they had to do the cath, where they go in through your femoral artery and go up. Well, at this hospital, this is before they had figured out what my problem was. They went in the left side. They got as far as they could go to a certain point, and they couldn't go any further. And they were like, that's weird. And they pulled it out, and they went in the other side, and they were able to see like all the way through. And they were like, oh, okay, well, everything's fine. And that's basically the way it was explained to me. I'm butchering that.
Wow.
Doctors explained it to me, like what they did. And basically what they had done is they had run into the problem, not realized it, and just meandered on about to check it the other route, and they were like, oh, it looks fine, and told me I was fine. And so I had another minor heart attack like a week later that landed me in the ER, and that's when my doctor that was from that was like, she jumped over all the political stuff in the doctor world there and said, we're gonna go somewhere else. And that's how I ended up in Boston. So I'm at Boston for heart surgery to have what's called an unroofing. And
at the age of 13.
Yeah, this is all at age of 13. This all happened over the course of like, I think the heart attack happened in like August or October of 20. That would have been 2003. Yeah. because I'm 29. Yeah. So yeah, it was that all happened over the course of about like 5 months. And the whole time, by the way, like when I was having the heart attack, the first thing that happened was I went to my swim coach and I was like, I think something's going on like with my chest. Like I don't feel okay. And he was like, I don't deal with chest. Go call your mom. And I went to go call my mom, and my mom and dad, they had like just sold the house that we were moving out of. So like my mom had like dropped me and my sisters off at swim practice. She was running home to like, she'd like, you were talking about earlier how you had like a crazy day or whatever. She was having one of those crazy days of like everything's going wrong. And then I called her and I was like, I don't feel okay. Will you come get me? And of course she thinks, oh, this is my 13-year-old son that's like trying to get out of swim practice. Like, which I never did. Like I wasn't that kind of kid, but she was like, her exact response was like, are you serious? And
like disbelief.
To this day, she's like, I feel so bad. He was having a heart attack, and my response was, are you serious? But
typical mom response though.
But yeah, so I ended up in Boston with a guy that goes from it was this specific surgeon had like just gotten hired or just started his job there. Like he was fresh off the plane, like and like
Greeny.
No. He was really, really experienced. He materialized out of nowhere. He's like one of the most skilled guys that just kind of like, oh, this guy's like really, really good. Who's he? And that's where they basically told me was that they were figuring out my problem through autopsies. And then they cracked me open. They did what's called an unroofing. And 3 months later, I was back in the pool. Like
wow,
on a thing. And like I was never, I wasn't going to the Olympics or anything like that, but I swam all the way through high school, then started playing high school football, and went into playing D1. Like I wanted to play D1 football, so that was my goal. So I went and I played football at Kentucky. So I went from having a heart attack to playing D1.
Division I football.
And that's kind of what fed into, like, I don't know where you want me to go with that, because I got a million.
Let's any direction. This, man. Let's just keep going.
I got you. Yeah, that's as far as I was going along, and really, I told my dad when I was really young that like I was always kind of like wanting to do something, and I was always a kid that was jumping off of tall things and like adrenaline junkie. Like I grew up on the river, like kayaking and swimming.
Right.
The like just high adventure stuff all the time. So like when I started playing football, like I really got into the competition side and like really got, and it fed that barbaric side.
Right.
Yeah, that urge of like, and Dad and I would always talk about it because my dad played football for Pat Dye at East Carolina.
Wow.
Early in Pat Dye's career, and so like I always kind of had that, like I wanted to play that, and I want, like, you get that fall, like you wanted to play football, and now we're learning all these things about like CTE and things like that. But I joke with people like I was in that last generation that like I was taught to lead with my head.
Right.
You're 11, 12 years old, and they tell you, to ring the bell, and if your bell ringing, you didn't hit the other guy hard enough.
Right.
And that's how I played, and I loved playing football like that. Like I played like violent football is what I played. Like I was like middle linebacker, dropping down to play in the D line, and then I got to play a fullback my last part of my senior year because I had a coach that I didn't really agree with. And so his uncle was our offensive coordinator. And so I like walked down the sideline during one game, and I was like, hey, you want to let me run the ball real quick? Because I wasn't getting to do what I wanted to on the other side. He's like, yeah, go ahead. And I like broke it out for like 45-yard touchdown. He's like, hey, you want to do that for the rest of the season? Like, sure. And that was playing like we have 1A AISA schools, so
Right.
like there were 27 people on my football team, and like 15 of those were seventh graders. So like we all played everything. Like I played wing back, fullback, all that. And so I got to college and really kind of like got an eye opener. Like because I went and played at University of Kentucky. And when I walked in there, I was at that point, because I swam all the way up till like my junior year, and then I decided like for real I wanted to do football, and I started to let the size get like I needed to be bigger is what I thought,
right?
Because that's what everybody had told me. Go. I grew up. I'm from Alabama, Smash Mouth, but like Southern football, like so it's. I needed to put weight on my bones and all this, and so that's what they told me, and so that's what I did. So I went from 175, 180 to like 225 between my junior and senior year.
That's a lot of growth in 6 months.
Oh yeah. And I was I was doing what any 17-year-old does when you tell them, hey man, you need to gain. So I just ate everything in sight. And but then I got to college and I looked around, and even then at 5'11", 225, like I was one of the smallest dudes in the locker room. Like I was looking around and like there were guys that were kickers than I was. And so I really kind of quickly realized that athleticism gap. And during that time while I was at Kentucky, I had a buddy of mine that kind of introduced me to wrestling. He was part of the wrestling club there. And first time seeing like guys get like tossed around and like getting tossed around myself by guys like half my size. I was like, oh, this is crazy. And then I didn't think anything else of it. And then
physics and leverage, my man. Physics and leverage.
Right. And so I went from football, and I played for a year and a half, and then I got cut from there because I just, like I said, I learned a lot about athletics at that point. And at that point in time, I was a little young, and I didn't really understand how to put the work ethic behind. Like I've always been dedicated. Like I'm one of those that I'll die on the treadmill type person. Like I'll die, like I stop. But it took a lot more growing for me to figure out. And plus, at that point, this was 2008 when we were at college. So my girlfriend, now wife, was in architecture, and I was in I had started off pre-med because all of my stuff I was like, oh, I need to go be a doctor.
I mean, logical next steps for somebody who survives a heart attack at 13.
Exactly. I spent
multiple heart attacks at 13.
I spent so much time in the hospital at that point. I was like, oh, I'm practically a shoe-in. And then I went to my first organic chemistry class. And afterwards, I went up to the teacher and I was like, hey, I'm like for chemistry, like 1.0, like whatever. And she was like, oh, yeah, that was this class. I was like, okay, I need to withdraw because I didn't understand anything you just said. I just an hour and a half completely lost. And then I was like, maybe pre-med's not where I need to be. But then I left Kentucky, and at that point, like I was saying, like at 2008, the job markets weren't looking too pretty during that time. And so like
I was an investment advisor in 2008. I started in 2007 and then left in 2011. So yeah, worst time ever to be in the financial world.
You walked in the door at the perfect time, didn't you? Was it the day before or the day after?
I mean, it was, so I started there in August of 2007.
Oh, wow.
So literally 3 months before I got my teeth kicked in.
Yeah.
But somehow managed to build a $15 million book in 4 years. So
wow. Hey, that's impressive.
But this isn't a business podcast, ladies and gentlemen. So that's a whole other conversation.
But so at that point, like we were kind of in that period of like, well, and like everybody goes through like in their early 20s of like figuring out like, what do I want to do? Like, how do I do? Like, where am I going to fall?
And sometimes that period lasts until you're in your early 40s.
And that's what I was just fixing to say, is that like, and then unraveled like what has been probably the last, I'd say like 8-9 years of mine. And really like this year I turned 29, and like I'm turning 30 in April. So like I've kind of like, at the first time in my life, I've been able to kind of like take a step back and see what a decade looks like. And like at different levels too. Like I can look around me and go, oh, that's what a decade of that. That's what a decade of partying looks like. Oh, that's what a decade of like that dude's been doing his stuff and like keeping his stuff together. Like, okay, like I get it. And that coupled with jujitsu, because that's kind of, I discovered jujitsu when I first got out of football, and then like life happened, because that's what I was just getting at, is like I was sitting there on the couch, and at the time, like we were, my wife had moved back, and we were both back living kind of in the same area that we had grown up in. And I was just kind of sitting there scrolling through, and I was doing classes, but I had no idea what kind of job was going to be available.
Right.
I mean, I had just competed with a buddy of mine's dad to get a like teller job at Academy or something like that. So like that's the point in like 2009, 2010 this was, of like, like, are there going to be any jobs? And so I found a job offer out there that it was just the like ongoing thing that they do for like the firefighters, police officers. So I was like, well, firefighter, that sounds, because then, like I said, I've always been an adrenaline junkie, and I was like, oh, that sounds fun. And so like I went and started that process and started looking into it. I was like, oh, this all looks really fun. So I started going all down it. And then there was like all these waiting processes that I didn't know about. And so like, as we got put in these waiting processes, somebody told me, hey, a lot of times they'll hire you quicker if you're already an EMT once you get there. So I was like, okay, cool. So like, I'll go over here, I'll get my EMT certification, and then they'll hire me quicker. Well, at the time, just like everybody said, like at 2008, 2009, like everybody was hurting. So like even the cities were taking time. So they were in a hiring freeze. And so after I got my EMT, they weren't hiring. And so I was like, oh, now what? And so then I had a buddy that worked on that I had made through getting my EMT, through my certifications. You have to like ride a certain number of hours and whatnot. And so like I had buddies that work for these private ambulances that we have down here. I don't know if y'all have it in Chicago, where it's like
all over the place.
Yeah. So we had a private ambulance company, and so I went to work for a private ambulance company. Fun part about that, I was making, when I left, I was making $10.50 an hour as a EMT, and I knew paramedics that were making $13 an hour, and like that's atrocious. Like for the people that are saving your lives, that like they could go make better money managing a McDonald's than riding a bus. And so, and I didn't know that. True. And somebody had told me at one point that they were like, yeah, but you can work 24 hours a day. So like nobody ever informed me about like tax brackets and stuff like that. And so like I would work all these jobs or work all these hours, and then there would be entire checks that just went to taxes, and I wouldn't make a dime off a 24-hour shift. And I had no idea that that was a thing until it happened, and I was like, wait, what? And then so I was working that, and I was smoking 2 packs a day. I had gotten up to I was 275 pounds at my heaviest.
Wow.
And just unhealthy, because when you're either working all the time, you're either on the bus and you're eating and you're sitting around and you're just not doing anything. And so I built all that up. And then when I quit that job, because I had seen kind of the writing on the walls, I left and I went to go become a lineman to work on high power climbing poles and stuff like that. So I lost down to about 240 pounds to be able to do that job. And then right after I started working on that job, I went to a local gym, and that's where I discovered jiu-jitsu, like for real. Like met a guy that was a wrestler, and kind of like there was this time period that like my wife was having to drive like an hour and a half back and forth to her job, and so I had like this free time, and so that's where I was like, well, I can twiddle my thumbs, or I could like get rid of this extra weight. Well, I was back then I was terrible about working out. Like I wasn't gonna work out like, and so I found like jiu-jitsu like tickled a part of my brain that I liked at that point. Like,
interesting adjective, but continue.
Yeah, it's the way that jiu-jitsu has always been explained to me when people try to put words to it is I've heard people say like it's like a Rubik's cube that's trying to choke you. And I
would say that's an accurate representation.
Yeah, and so like that aspect, when I go train somewhere and there's a guy, that can, or girl, I mean, there's girls in jiu-jitsu that are monsters.
Mm-hmm.
You go, I want to go train with people that can, give me a challenge and submit me. Like I'm not here for, to just kind of meander.
Hit somebody and get hit.
Yep. Right. And so like I really liked that aspect because it fed that part of my brain that I had missed from football. And then it was one of those things too that like you just, when you train, it always, people talk about like their runs can be things. And I've gotten to the point now that I'm in the kind of shape that like any type of exercise I do, like I can sit there and go, okay, I'm going to have a better day if I just go for my run, or if I just go, if I just go. And I've said this before on my podcast of I love jiu-jitsu because it makes every part of my life better. Like there's nothing that it doesn't touch that, it doesn't either, center me better, or if it doesn't get me back, to my like mental zen or whatever we want to say. But I came from 250, 240 to now I walk around at like 175, and and it stayed off, and it gives me the motivation to continue to do it.
All right, you're inspiring me to go out and get my ass kicked now.
Oh man, I think everybody should do jiu-jitsu. Like I'm definitely somebody who's a proponent for anyone and everyone doing jiu-jitsu. Have you ever done any grappling or anything of that nature?
I mean, does with my kids count? Sad life, but I mean nothing seriousness, nothing of serious nature. But I mean, I've got a good friend of mine here in my hometown. He actually is like, I don't know, I think Tommy's like 6 degree black belt, like badass, competitive, like pretty good amateur record as far as like amateur fights goes. But no, I think he's in his early 50s, and he's in the best shape I've ever seen him. And I've known him for going on 10 years now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and that's after
one
knee blowout and all that other stuff. So
yeah, that's one of my best training partners. Is probably, I think, Forrest like 52, and he's the same way. I might say 52, and he might actually be like 42. And
so when he hears these, he's gonna really kick your ass the next time that you train.
Exactly. Good thing he doesn't know how to use the internet.
So he really must be 52 then.
Yeah.
Well, man, that's fuck. That
yeah, like that's not even really that's the gist of how I've gotten to where I am now. That I'm, I worked as a lineman. I've fought like for the last 8 years. I quit that job 4 years ago to go into business with my mom in a marketing and advertising company that we have. That was one that she started when I was born. And so I came in and kind of was like, hey, let's kind of bring things all the way to, the 21st century. And now it's kind of morphed into we've we're still a full service. Like, we're still capable of, if somebody needs posters, we can go do posters. If somebody needs, XYZ, we can do whatever. But we've done all the social sides of things, but we're pivoting into, funny enough, podcasting is kind of what we do. And we come in,
which is what predicated Becca reaching out to me, I presume.
Right. Which that's my sister, which we brought her on as our bookers, and I was just making the joke about with her because setting up the trip out there, she's doing both of ours, and I mean, I'll open up now. We're to the point that like she just updates our calendar, so you'll open your calendar, and send her a text, and be like 6:45 a.m. What are we doing? But she's put us on a next level of like, that's something nice that like from a business standpoint, having somebody else come in and be able to like, I know it's all there, but like putting it all on paper for me really has helped that.
Oh, absolutely, man.
But
absolutely.
But yeah, so, and then I've been fighting for that entire time so I've been fighting for the last 7 years, and I'm still amateur. I'm working on the transition to pro, because the whole, like, people talk about it, like in fighting, the difference between pro and amateur is whether or not somebody will pay you to fight, basically. Like, you can call yourself a pro whenever you want to, but that means you're fighting pros. So kind of getting all the things ironed out that I want to. Like, I just finally made to where like I'm fighting at 155 pounds now. So like, I like the weight class, I like the cut, I like everything. And so like, I'm getting that whole thing worked out in the amateurs, and then like we're making the transition to pro here soon.
Good shit, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right. So now we've gotten a depth of the story. We've gotten kind of an overview of 13 to now, pretty much. So you said you're 29 turning 30. So a solid 16-year kind of overview.
Oh, yeah.
With that being said, so let's drill down a little bit, right? Because to know the overview is great, but when we talk about mental health, right, and all of the obstacles that one has to overcome in their life to get to any point, regardless of where they are, and anybody who's been paying attention to my content, this podcast, whatever, for the last several years knows my story. So I'm not going to reiterate it.
Right.
You can go back and listen to any of the other 50 episodes of this podcast that exist. By the way, go do that. Not right now, but at some other point in time, just go do that. Or the other 170 episodes of a vlog that I put out, or any thousands of posts that I put across social media. You'll see. But let's drill down into, okay, what were some of those, outside of the obvious heart attack at 13?
Right.
What were some of those moments or obstacles or struggles or moments of darkness, however you want to phrase it, that you had to overcome? And then specifically what you've done in those moments to kind of move through them.
Yeah. I mean, as far as where you're getting at on the question, if I understand it completely, is that I'm one of those that, coming along, it kind of created a weird dynamic for me, being a kid that like I was faced with, because I was faced with accepting my own death at 13, basically. And so kind of taking that and then expanding it on where I went from there, I always kind of, for a long time, had a feeling that like I had to do something special. Like I couldn't be just this normal person that had to. So like every time I would meet somebody, they'd be like, "Oh, it's such a blessing that you're alive. Oh, it's so great that you're destined to do these." So I had to so every single time I failed at something, it felt like, I just disappointed God himself when I would fail, because why else would I still be sitting around?
Right.
And so like
talk about pressure.
Right.
Fuck. Right. Anyways, keep going.
Right. And so like that's kind of where I always took things to 11, and I always took it to I had to do it. And fortunately for me, like I never really steered down any of those pathways that were extremely detrimental. And I would imagine I learned at the cost of a lot of people in
Right.
those my life. Like I saw things happen to others that I didn't want to go. Like I saw guys go down paths and not come back. And so like as I grew up, I knew that about myself. And so to like come full circle and answer the tail end of yours is that I tried to be self-aware. And I mean, this is a daily battle for me of I take everything to 11. Like, and my wife knows it. Like, if I get obsessed with something, oh boy, here we go. Here's another one of Isaac's phases. Like, like I'm like, this is like what I'm doing. Like, I know I'm taking it to 11. So like, I can't, present myself with opportunities that are destructive because I'm going to take it to 11. If it's destructive, if it's non-destructive, like I'm going to take it to that level. And I had to learn that coming along through kind of because like early on in my fight career, like it's really easy to get hung up on the glorious and not even like getting to the big shows or doing anything like spectacular. It's just the fact that somebody's excited about the fact you just fought. Like you can get wrapped up in the whole party side of it, and you paid the $75 in gas that it took to get down there to fight. Like you're not making a dime, but you're caught up in the party side of it. So I've always tried to know that and present myself with constructive things that I can take to 11, if that makes sense.
I like it.
So,
I like the constructive to 11 philosophy. That's nice. I mean, honestly, I mean, you addressed a lot of that earlier because like you were talking about, okay, this didn't work, so I went and did this. I mean, so your way of navigating those obstacles, your way of navigating that darkness was persistence in the pursuit of what drove you. And right. I think when, especially now we're in an era where social media dictates so much of our lives, right? And I've said this in previous episodes, and I'm probably going to continue to say it in this one and then future ones, because anybody and everybody who's like a fan of comics or a fan of Spider-Man knows the statement, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
And that's exactly what we have here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have the ability and such great power, yet so many of us squander it or use it for not good things. And I'm looking at it from we have, for the first time, quite possibly the first time ever, are sitting in a position to impact millions of lives from devices like this one or that one. And what are we going to do with it? Are we actually going to do something with it, or are we just going to sit back and watch it happen?
Yeah.
And this is one of the things I've always respected about you, is like, you're just out there fucking doing it. You're going to do it. And if you don't like it, and if it doesn't work, you're going to do something else. And you're just going to continue to push forward. And like you said, just take it to 11 all the time, and take things that are constructive to 11 all the time. And to me, that's an inspiring position to be in, because I mean, everybody's mental health journey is different. Everybody's background is different. Everybody comes from different places, but the one thing that we're tied to, and the one thing that ties us together, is us. And we're in a position now where when we talk about mental health, I mean, this whole show and the entire concept of this was born out of a place that I was just pissed off that nobody was proactively talking about these things that impact so many people.
Yeah.
Right. Growing up in the music industry, having who are constantly struggling, constantly striving, just fighting. And then all of a sudden you hear a horrible story.
Yeah.
And then in the music space, it's like I got hit hard personally when people that I look up to in the professional level, and then even people on the personal side who are struggling and have struggled, that I know. And it's like, if we just spoke up and then we just created and just used our voice to actually have proactive, like influential conversations around the subject of mental health, then maybe something would change. Maybe then we're not saying, oh, well, we could have helped that guy, rather than actually fucking saying something and helping them.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm tired of the Chester Benningtons, the Chris Cornells, the Anthony Bourdains, the Kate Spades of the world. Not only them, because they're the ones that we read about.
Right.
What about the thousands of others that we never read about?
Yeah.
But they're impacted in the lives of so many people around them. I mean, I had a staggering statistic. So back from from January to August of 2018, right? I live in a county in Illinois called Winnebago County. Well, I technically live in Boone County, but semantics. And from January until August of last year, there were 39 confirmed suicides in one county, in one state, in one country.
Wow. That's a lot.
So extrapolate that out. We're one of hundreds of thousands of counties.
Right.
In one of dozens of counties in one state, let alone that one state is a part of 50 states. That 50 states is a part of one country. That country is a part of a world of 208 countries, plus or minus a couple. Like, that's the depth and level that this goes to. And if we're not talking about it, then what the fuck what's the point? If we're not proactively trying to change it, might as well just give up. Because nobody is going to change this for us but us. Nobody's going to have these conversations but us. Nobody's going to do the work but us. There's no amount of legislation. There's no amount of political involvement. There's no amount of paying insurance companies. There's no amount of anything other than us binding together and doing the work and having the conversations and creating the safe places that allow people to be vulnerable in, rather than, well, I can't really talk about that, especially like being men. Not to exclude women in this circumstance, but being men. I mean, you're a couple of years younger than me, but we kind of grew up in the same era where it's like, men don't cry.
Be tough.
Right, be tough. Fucking rub some dirt on it, get up, shake it off, like do all those things.
I grew up around linemen, and because my dad was in the electrical, or still is in the electrical, so I grew up around linemen and bull riders, and a lot of times they were the same dude. Like, those are some tough dudes. Like, you better rub some dirt in it.
Right. Oh, your leg's broken? Yeah, that's fine. Just put it back in place. You'll be fine.
How does it make you feel? What? Feelings.
Right. Oh my God. You mean this thing in here actually does something?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's just the thing. How many circumstances like those that I've mentioned previously could have been avoided if we just looked at somebody and say, what's going on today? Like, you seem off.
Yeah.
And then doing the thing that's impossible for 95%, I'm going to say 100% of the populace, shutting up and listening when they talk. Because when you're dealing with a mental health situation, the last fucking thing that you want is advice. You just want somebody that's going to hear your shit.
Yep.
And say, I see you. I hear you. And because it's not about getting advice, it's about feeling of acceptance and knowing that you're not alone. And to anybody and everybody who is listening to this in real time or listens to this after the fact, and if you are struggling, reach out. If not to me, hit up Isaac on Instagram. I know he'll respond. Hell, my fucking cell phone number is in my Instagram profile. I want to see how many of you guys actually take me up on calling me or sending me a text message, because like, that's why I have access to me there, because I want you guys to know that you're not alone. So I don't know. I'm going to get off my high horse now, because like the soapbox, I got to put it away.
It's good. That's what it's there. That's what it's there for.
Because like this, I mean, it's going to, like I said, it's going to take us to fix this. And the only way that we can do that is becoming vulnerable and open with each other and saying, hey, what's up today? Or what's going on? Or want to get coffee? Or, hey, virtual coffee. Yeah. I mean, you're not drinking coffee right now, but we could be literally drinking coffee together and just having this conversation.
I found that I've had to cut back on the coffee. Like,
water. We can talk over water. All right.
I've discovered that the more that I pour caffeine on top of stress, it doesn't help.
Yeah, that's a definitive truth. I'll give you that one, my man. All right. So we've gone through all that. Yeah. The heart attacks at 13, the surgery, the losing out on the passion of football, the kind of just the way of always going to 11 no matter what, as long as it's positive for you. So as we kind of bring it into the closing segment of the show, because I mean, hard to believe we're almost at 50 minutes already.
Oh, wow.
See, everybody criticized me when I started this show. They're like, why in the fuck are you going for an hour? I'm like, yeah, because this conversation doesn't happen in 10 minutes.
Oh, no. It's big.
And I've had people who have been messaging me and they're like, can I come back for a second version? I'm like, I haven't done that kind of series yet, but maybe. Anyways, so let's hear about some of the exciting things in your world right now. I know you shared a little bit about it, but like go a little bit deeper.
Well, I mean, the exciting things kind of all couple into where the last couple of years I've been in the fight world and pushing forward in both that and my business. I've been, I'm all over the board on things that I'm doing. I just finished an edit right now with a shout out to Joel Byers Comedy. I just edited his first comedy special. So
Nice.
I just got my first director's credit that I'm working on. I'm working in the edit on it right now. I'm working in the fight world. I just registered I'll be coming through to visit you to have you on my podcast, and that'll be on the tail end of I'm going to compete in IBJJF Worlds, the
Nice.
out in California in December. So really kind of trying to take that as far as I can take it. I'm taking the fighting, and I tell people all the time I want to be the Spike Jones of jiu-jitsu. I want to be making movies all along the way.
I love it.
I have all kinds of different things that I'm doing with that. I've got a couple musician buddies that I'm working on, trying to get some music videos under my belt. Like I want to do some of that work.
Nice.
So the positivity you asked me, I guess I started rambling. The positive things in my life, the exciting things are that is really kind of doubling down on that and testing myself, because that's the whole reason that I'm in the fight world is I'm trying to take that test and really like
Right.
in pursuit of that. Like, so win, lose, or draw, that's not really what I'm there for. I'm there for a certain feeling. I'm there for that Rubik's Cube trying to choke me type of riddle. If there's a riddle or something attached to it, that's great. But I'm here for a fight. I'm here for a entertainment. And then there's the entertainment aspect of it that I've really kind of gotten drawn into, and like kind of had fun with it and played with it, because I mean it is entertaining. I mean, it breaks out on a playground, a bunch of little kids are going to form a circle and they're going to watch the fight. And so
yeah, it's something about that just makes you like, all right, I'm paying attention now.
Yeah. And so and really kind of that type of stuff. And as I've grown, like I said, I'm making that kind of coming of age turn where like I see a lot of what hard work and time. I'm spending a lot of time having my told out that way. I'm referring to my dad. I'm at that age now that I'm like, oh man, I should have listened to him. He told me to do that, or he told me not to do that. So pushing things in that direction, and like you said, taking things to 11 that are beneficial. So
good stuff. Oh man, well, we had a little bit of technological glitches at the beginning of this thing, but we got rocking and rolling, and thank you again for that. We have a few more minutes left, but I just want to honestly, I want to express a lot of gratitude, not only to you for joining me on this, but just for the people who have been involved with this, and all of the guests that have made it happen, and the kind of the behind the scenes people, and literally the amount of response that I have of people who are wanting to be a part of this. And then it's just about, much like what we've kind of already alluded to, about taking things to 11. And that's really what this podcast is going to be done, is going to happen with this podcast over the next several months. Is its mission is changing a little bit, because the original mission when I started this was like, I want to positively influence one person to make their lives better with each episode. Now and then of course you get to know, and you listen to people like Grant Cardone, and I read his book 10X, or I should say listen to his book 10X over the summer. And I was like, wait a second, I completely did my show a disservice because I said I only want to help one people. No, fuck it. I want to help everybody.
Yeah.
I want this whole thing to be known by everybody, because that's the only way that this thing is actually going to become an engine for change when it's around the subject of mental health, right? Because any of us can say we want to do something, but then we're like, okay, well, we only want to help one person. No, like I literally want everybody to fucking know about the show. And not only about the show, but about the amazing organizations around the world that are actually doing the work that is necessary to create and be an engine of change.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about like organizations like Hope for the Day, like Project Semicolon, all of these other organizations who literally fight the literal good fight every single day. Yeah. And for me, that's what's exciting to me, is that I'm affiliating myself with these organizations more. And now we're looking at it from the mental health technology piece. Like, how do we make reaching out and asking for help easier? Because I mean, I don't know necessarily, Isaac, if this is something that you've struggled with, but for those of you out there who have depression, who have had anxiety issues, or have gone through those like really, really dark moments, and then you go to Google, because that's what we do in 2019 or 2018 or 2015. We type in depression, or we type in alcoholism, or we type in anxiety, we type in stress, we type in whatever. And then based on where we are in the world, I'm going to use Chicago as a reference point because I've done this. So a couple years ago, I had said, I typed in depression Chicago. Literally had 8 million search results.
Good gosh.
Okay, so now take that into consideration when you think about mental health, right? And anxiety, and anxiety kind of being the base for a lot of the other more in-depth and more powerful of the mental health conditions out there. And you get presented with 8 million options. When you're depressed and anxious, you're going to not make a decision because that 8 million is too many.
Yeah.
Fuck, 100,000 is too many. 10 might be too many.
Yeah.
So now I'm working behind the scenes to actually create a platform that will make access to resources easier based on what you're struggling with and where you are in the world. The goal will be to provide the user with a list of 3 to 5 vetted resources in their community that they can call, that they can message, or that they can fucking show up to.
Oh, that's cool.
So obviously it's a big technological project. And it's actually going to be furthered. So we're taking it a little bit of one step further. I got asked about 2 months ago from an executive producer of a television show that I'm going to be working with, but I can't say too much about yet. Okay, if you had a week to solve a problem in the world, what would you do? I said, all right, I'd end suicide. And I think I cut out for a second on the Facebook feed, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
All right, I'm back now.
Yeah.
I saw you lift your headphones, and I'm like, yep, I cut out. But if I had a week to end the problem in the world, what would I do? I said, all right, I'd end suicide. And they're like, okay, well, how? I said, okay. So I explained what I just explained to you, and they're like, all right, go bigger. I said, all right. So I'd work to have the technology that I'm developing hardwired into every electronic device that's manufactured by Apple, Samsung, Amazon, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So that not only would you be able to get the resources, but it also learns your behavior. So as you're moving through your day, it actually recommends things for you throughout it, so that not only are you getting access in the moment in which you need it, but you're also getting tips and tricks throughout the day. Oh yeah. And then also all the in real life actual community building that is necessary to support a technological development. So that's one of the exciting things. And it's one of those things where it's necessary because the only way that we can create change is to be the motherfucking change.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. And to touch on what you're saying is that, like, you were saying earlier that you need to try jujitsu. Jujitsu for me, like, that's where I found the community. That's where I found I know I've posted it on my Instagram before, and I've said it before of like and guys say this all the time of like, that's my sanctuary. That's my, like, when I go to the mat and I go, like, if I'm having a bad day or like things are like really like, I know if I can go get on a mat and go train. And that's what's special about the community is that, like, you can go train with complete strangers and it's a mutual language that you can speak. Like, you can slap, literally like a slap bump. And like, everybody who trains jiu-jitsu, if they saw me on that, do that. When you go to slap hands and you bump fists and you roll.
Right.
And for 5 minutes, not a single problem except for the fact that fool across the mat from you is trying to choke you. That's the only thing that matters. That is absolutely all that matters. Try to be depressed while someone's putting you to sleep. Don't happen. So by the time you get to the end of 25 minutes of that, or 30 minutes of that, or an hour, I mean, I go to open mats where guys like we won't walk out for 2.5 hours, and it'll just be steam rising off the mat. And that is where, like you said, it gives you that community that you need, and something that, just for those out there that are looking for something, jiu-jitsu, if you can't find somebody to call, go to a local gym. And I can guarantee you, after 5 o'clock or around lunchtime, there are going to be some dudes in there trying to chase away the demons, and it's a fun way to do it.
Awesome. I mean, fuck. I need to call my guy then, apparently, because that's something that I need to. And I mean, for me, that was running over the summer. That's been running, right? I love to run. Also hate it or dislike it. I don't use the word hate. Also dislike it because I get horrible shin splints, and that's like debilitating at times. But anyways, so yeah, that was running for me. But now it's Chicago and it's November and it's fucking cold. So try running outside when it's 20, 30 degrees outside and the snow's coming down. All right, I don't care how Sly Stallone you want to be. Oh, apparently Facebook or Instagram doesn't even give me a warning anymore.
It just went away. Wow. That just
Instagram lives top out in an hour.
Oh, okay.
So, but usually it'll give you a countdown to tell you.
Yeah.
Now it apparently decides it doesn't want to do that. So it just turns off. That's fine. That's because, I mean, that video is going to end in 24 hours anyways. So this is the one that stays. But anyways, so if you had kind of words of wisdom or a powerful phrase that you just wanted to leave the people with, what would it be?
It would be, don't give up. It would be that you're not actually by yourself. You think you're by yourself. Everybody, and I saw, I mean, this is gonna sound corny because I liked the movie. Reminded me of me as a kid, like a lot of it, like they hit the mark with their market. Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
So what I was saying is that I saw the movie mid-90s, and he said a phrase of, some people, or you wouldn't like what you got if you took somebody else's shit for a day. And so just because you feel alone, just because you feel you're by yourself, a lot of times there's plenty of other people around you that feel the same way. So a lot of times, look left, look right, ask for help, and somebody's going to be there.
I mean, I love it. Oh, man. I can't believe that's already kind of time to wrap the episode, man. It seems like it just started.
Yeah.
But
had a blast.
We can pick up the second half of this one when you come out to Chicago in December, and you get to hear my side of the story.
There you go. But it's the other side on the Daily Stack.
Right. So I'm going to end it. We will be back. Actually, I've already identified. See, this is the blessing that I have about this show. When I started it a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I never anticipated it to be what it became. Right. It was supposed to just be a month of mental health awareness videos because I liked alliteration, and I got angry about the fact that nobody was talking about what needed to be talked about. And then now it's like I've got pretty much guests, a backlog of guests for probably to get me through the 6th season. Nice. So this is just such an amazing blessing to be a voice and to be given the ability to do the work that I do, because not everybody could do this. Right. And so I want it to be known that I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm grateful for anybody and everybody who is taking action and making their lives better. I'm grateful for everybody, for you, and taking time out of your Wednesday night to be a part of this. And it's just humbling. So I'm gonna end this on a little mantra statement phrase. I'm still trying to determine the adjective for what this was called, but I'm just gonna say statement. And it is as follows. The first part, point 1, is find happiness in however you need to do it, for whatever works for you, and every single day of the week, find happiness on your terms and nobody else's. Second, have fun, because life, as we know, is way, 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 way too short. And we often get stuck in the mire and the stress and the bullshit, especially for entrepreneurs or creators or business people or hell, just humans. Life can eat at you. Make sure you take time to have fun. And last but certainly not least, work, because anything and everything in this life that's fucking worth a damn takes actual physical blood, sweat, and tears effort. And in between all of that, make sure that you take time to breathe. Even if you just say that word once a day, it does that really, really cool thing where it forces you to do the action of the word itself. So until next week, my friends, be well. And all the other episodes and stuff like that are available. And support the podcast, support Isaac, go check him out. And we'll be back next week.
Cool deal. Thanks, man.